Good morning. How's it going? There you go. Hey, I'm so excited to be here. Pastor Kelly asked me to come and speak, and I'm like, that's going to be cool. It's a lot of friends and family that I know here, so I'm pretty comfortable. I don't know if that's good or bad. I guess we will see. But man, just what an honor. I wanted to let you guys know, I've been doing this church thing quite a while, and I did about 20 years in youth ministry and planting churches, and I've been involved in churches from Minnesota to Oklahoma to Michigan and all over. And you guys have one of the most kingdom-minded leadership teams I've ever met. And so you can give some appreciation and love to them. That's a pretty cool deal. So again, I'm excited, honored to be here. A little about me. My wife, Lindsay, is a teacher at Easter. Some of you guys probably have seen or know her. She's suffering right now. She's in New York City. A friend of ours kind of blessed her with the trip of a lifetime in New York City. And she left Wednesday and will come back on the 1st. And they're doing it all. They have a room that is looking out their window down on Times Square. And so they're going to be watching the festivities on Tuesday night. Is that Tuesday night? Monday night. And you can be praying for my kids. If you know Lindsay and I very well, you know that she's the glue. And when the glue's gone, things just don't stick. I woke up this morning and I couldn't find my jeans. And I'm like, hey, where are my jeans? And she's like, I don't care. I'm like, okay, thanks. No. She didn't say that. So I grabbed the first pair I could find, and anyway. So pray for my kids. They do have clothes on. They may not be clean, but they have clothes on. So my mom has stepped up and has them this morning so I can focus. But, my job is with an organization called Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I started in March, and maybe you guys have had that in your school growing up, FCA, the Bible study before school thing. My job is an area director, so I oversee the work from St. James all the way over to Bolivar and in Polk County. I have one of the coolest jobs around where I just get to hang out with teams and people, and I get to raise money, and I get to exhaust my resources to take the gospel to coaches and athletes and use their influence to make an impact in their schools. And it's awesome. I love it. It's a blessing. And part of how my job works is support raising. I have people in my life that support me. I have churches that support me, and I have businesses. You guys do support me here. And I wanted to say thank you. It's been amazing, and I get choked up every time I talk about it. But just to see Jesus moving. We've had 93 students come to Jesus this year since school started. Yeah. We have 6 new FCA huddles in schools that we've never been in before. And so they're meeting every week to talk about Jesus in their school. And this is probably the coolest part of all, but you can't tell anybody this. FCA is the second greatest distributor of Bibles in the world after the Gideons. And we give Bibles out directly in schools. So we've given out 300 Bibles this year. And this is the secret. I ship those right to high schools. And I walk in with a box of Bibles to schools, and the principal, hey man, how's it going? Good to see you. I'm taking Bibles to your teachers, and they're going to distribute them in your school. And so, what you guys are, the support that you are giving to help make it happen, you guys are right on the front lines with us. And I met with the chaplain of a prison just Friday in Waynesville, and I gave him a box of Bibles to take to kids, like teenagers or juveniles in his facility. I'm like, it's probably a pretty good investment. I don't think people that support me care if I give away Bibles in prisons. There's a kid that goes to a college here locally, and he's a professed atheist, and he said, can I have a Bible? I'm like, yeah, I'll give you 3 of them. So it's just amazing, my job. If you're a prayer, if you like to pray, put us on your list that we would be able to steward the access that we have in schools, that we would be able to handle what God has given us to there's 789 coaches and like 26,000 students in all my schools. And for me to have that access is a pretty special thing. And the beauty is, because I'm there, you guys are right there with me, and I wanted to thank you for that. And you can just be praying for us. We'll take all the prayers that we can get. We have an office here in town that we opened, and man, it's just fun to see God move, and the fact that we get to do what we get to do in this country is a pretty amazing thing in this day and age. A while back, I was on Facebook, and a friend of mine posted something. He says, I have gymnophobia. And I get in my pastoral mode, and I'm like, oh, one of the sheep is struggling. And so I don't know what gymnophobia is, though. And I'm not real smart, so I copy the phrase in Facebook, I have gymnophobia, and I paste it into Google. Does anybody know what it is? It's the fear of getting naked in public. And I'm like, oh, he doesn't have any issue. He's just being a clown, and not a big deal. Well, I didn't think about it, and I go back to my work, and part of my routine and ritual every day is to get on Facebook, and I'll turn and do it this way. On the right side on your computer in Facebook is a button you click, and it will say, John Brake and 12 of your friends have birthdays today. And you click on that, and it puts a new window, and it lines up all of those birthdays, where I just type happy birthday, and I highlight it, and I copy and I paste it, and I just hit Control V, enter, Control V, enter, and in like 6 seconds, I can wish happy birthday to like 15 people. Well, on this particular day, I screw up the copy and paste part, and instead of wishing my 15 friends happy birthday, I say, I have gymnophobia. Yeah. And so, during the time it was happening, have you ever had those slow motion moments in life when it's like, and then poof, the window's gone, and I was doing it half-heartedly anyway. Sometimes I just put HBD, my wife gets mad at me, actually type out happy birthday. But on this particular day, the window disappears, and I'm like, Lord, I don't know who I just told that I don't like to get naked in public. But if that was you, I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, you can laugh at me. But that day I learned a lesson. I learned that you have to be careful what you copy and paste into your life. And I learned a good lesson that day. We'll just say it that way. So today we're going to look at the life of Lazarus and look at some things that we should be copying and pasting into our lives. And so bear with me as I kind of get through the story. We're going to open up John 11, verse 1. A man named Lazarus was sick, and you've heard this story before. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. This is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was sick, so the two sisters sent a message to Jesus saying, your dear friend is very sick. But when Jesus heard about it, he says, Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God. So the Son of God, we'll talk about that later, will receive glory for this. Although Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. Now, Jesus' response here is setting up what happens the rest of his life. And what is interesting about this story is it's obvious Mary and Martha have a little relationship with Jesus, right? The one you love is sick. You ever gone to Jesus and we kind of manipulate things? It's like, Jesus, your friend Mike needs you. Jesus, hello, your friend needs you. Hello, you're a friend. He needs you. Have we ever done that before? And it's like, Jesus, where are you? So, through the rest of the story here, I talk about the Mike Flanders version, the MFV, and I'm going to give some commentary, and there'll be some laughable moments here. But you need to understand as we walk through this story, in those moments when you say, Jesus, and he doesn't seem like he's showing up, and you say, Jesus, you're like, where are you at? Jesus, your dear friend, your child needs you. Mary and Martha are not any different than us. Then in the midst of our copied and pasted life, our copied and pasted drama, the things that are going on in our life, when we ask Jesus or God to get involved, we have to submit to how and when and what he does to make that happen. Does that make sense? Jesus never asked us to fix and solve things. That's his job. Our job is simple. It's to trust. And we have to understand, like Mary and Martha, in the midst of whatever's copied and pasted into your life, just because Jesus doesn't show up doesn't mean he's not working on it behind the scenes in the background. And so be okay with where you're at and what you're going through, and understand that the copied and pasted things in your life, he wants to get you through those. He's not the author of those, but he's come to breathe life into the things in us that are dead. As you jump back into the story here in verse 17, it says, when Jesus finally arrived in Bethany, he was told that Lazarus has been in the grave for 4 days. And if this would have been Victor Baptist Church, I grew up in Iowa. Anybody ever been to Victor, Iowa? Not much there. Had this been Victor Baptist Church where I grew up, I can close my eyes and tell you where each table and chair were set up. Because you know we're creatures of habit, right? You guys grew up in churches just like I grew up in. Thank God this one is different. The same preacher, the same funeral message, the same cemetery, the same potluck. The same tables in the same place, the same chairs in the same place. The same smells of beanies and weenies, which for those of you that are younger, it's, you know, if you don't have money, you just buy hot dogs and you cut them up and you put them in the can of beans. It's good stuff. It's like a bologna sandwich. Very nostalgic. Maybe you had that growing up. Maybe that smell of fried chicken, the smell of the urinal cakes in the men's bathroom that smelled like pine. Anybody remember that? Seriously. Church, yeah. You're in the men's bathroom? Just extend your hands over here. Let's pray. Anyway. And the smell of that mystery meat casserole that we always thought was tuna, but we didn't know. I never tried it. But look, we're creatures of habit. We're creatures of ruts. We're creatures of rhythm. And what happens when we get in our patterns and we get in our ruts and we get in our rhythms is that dictates the expectation of what we get out of life. And I'm so thankful that Jesus came to break that stuff up, that God sent Jesus to revive that which is dead in us and change everything, no matter where you're at, no matter how rough it is. Jesus came to do that. Verse 20, when Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him. So Martha left, Mary stayed. Verse 21, Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. And after a brief conversation, hope is revived in Martha, and Jesus says, go get Mary. And so she goes back, and you guys have been there in life when you're so overwhelmed, you can't see, you can't think, you can't function, you're numb. It's been a funeral, and it's hard, and it's family. And I can see this playing out. Martha is so excited because he showed up, and he sent me to get Mary, and she's trying to get Mary's attention. And at first, it's like, Mary. And Mary's not paying attention. And eventually she has to go and say, hey, the teacher's here. He needs to see you. And what happened at that point is Mary, she left, and everybody thought this is the rhythm of the day. When the family leaves, you got to follow them. They're going to go to the grave. That's what they did. And so in this story, they kind of flash mobbed to Jesus that day because that's the rhythm of the day. That was what you do. Verse 32, when Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet. Lord, if only you'd been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. Have you ever noticed when the Son of God gets deeply troubled, something's getting ready to happen? One time in a church, he flipped a bunch of tables over because he didn't like what was going to happen there. And I don't know what he wore, because we always wear bathrobes in Christmas plays, because I think that's how we assume. But I can see Jesus rolling his sleeves up that day and saying, where's he buried at? Where's he at? Let's go there. And Jesus, verse 38, was still angry. He arrived at the tomb, a cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. Roll the stone aside, he said. Remember that Jesus in that church we grew up in Sunday school, and they had those flannel graph things? And he's like sitting with the kids with a smile on his face, and he's got a lamb. He's like petting a lamb next to him. I don't think that's the guy that was in this scene. I think the passion and the heart, and in a few minutes we're going to talk about what was changing in Jesus that day. And he said, Lazarus, it's time to get out of there. And Lazarus comes out of there, and he's like, take those funeral clothes off of Lazarus. Here's the deal. I love this story because I can copy and paste any circumstance, any situation I've ever been through. I can copy and paste that into my life. The challenges, the struggles, the weight, the heaviness, you could put any story in there, whether it's something serious or not serious. And I've learned that I see myself in the characters in this story. First of all, Martha. Are there any Marthas here? I tend to be wired like a Martha. Everything's got to be proper and everything in its place. And if things get off kilter, then it's just watch out because the storm's coming. I live that way, and I've lived that way the past few days because Lindsay's gone. And like if you come to my house, there's still Christmas paper wrappings on the floor. And I'm like, I'll get it later. Sometimes I'm Martha and sometimes I'm Mary. Martha was a doer. She likes to do. She likes to be busy. She likes to keep things all in its place. She's very proper. You know, you could say Martha was like religion in our lives, that everything's got to look good. Everything's got to be a certain way. Martha was the doer. Remember in the other story, and we can prove that because in the other story, Martha is doing what while Jesus is with Mary? She's cleaning. So you can see she's wired this way. Everything's got to be put in its place. Everything's got a place. Everything has to look all wonderful and pretty. Let's talk about, now I've been Martha in times when Jesus shows up and I'm like scared to show Jesus what he wants to show up to fix. Jesus, it stinks in there. He's been dead 4 days. That's what she said. He's been dead 4 days. It's going to stink in there. Martha, everything has to be perfect. It's this proper religion that we have. Look, Jesus fought religion his whole life here. And that religion oftentimes started out good, but it becomes the thing that hinders the supernatural happening in our lives. And again, thank God that Jesus came to break that religion in our life when we can have relationship with him. Mary, let's talk about Mary. If Martha was the doer, Mary was the beer. I don't even know how you'd spell that. Mary was the one that she sat at the feet of Jesus in two situations. Number one, when Jesus came to their house, she poured oil on his feet. And somebody, if you research that out, she spent a year's worth of salary on that oil because she was worshiping Jesus at that time. And in this story, when Jesus shows up, she just falls at the feet of Jesus and cries. If Martha's the doer and she's the proper religious one, Mary is the beer and she just likes to hang out at the feet of Jesus. You know what? Sometimes we need that. Just to like therapeutically line things back up. We just got to sit at the feet of Jesus and just have a good cry. I think the girls call it an ugly cry. Is that right, ladies? Is that, I don't know. That's what I hear. Sometimes we just got to fall down at his feet and be like, man, nothing else matters but being with you right here and right now in this moment. And sometimes we need that. You know what, guys? It's not real manly, but it's okay. Because there's a point where the Martha in us has to break free to care about what everybody says about us. Because I'm just here, it's just Jesus and me. I mean, I've had to do that in my life, in this new role and this new job and the weight that God is helping me carry. Because, guys, it's heavy. 52 schools, 26,000 students. And when I have people like you that step next to me, I can carry this load with God. But look, we have moments where we're weak. And I thank God, whether we're Mary, where we're just, I just need you, Jesus, or whether we're Martha, when just everything's got to look proper and in its place, Jesus came for both of us. The ones that do and the ones that be. And as we mature, I'm 45, I'm not as young as I once was. I know I look about 25. Lindsay's her 40th birthday in New York. She's way older than me. If she's watching, hi, love you. Kids are okay. I fed them candy. They go to grandma's candy. Anyway, anybody can relate to my daughter has had 3 root canals because of my mom's gummy bears, I think. So we're talking about maturing. As we mature, we need to start to understand how we're wired and how that impacts how we come to the Father and to the Son. And that's wisdom, and that's maturity. And that's what we're going to talk about here as we're kind of walking these things out. But I'm so grateful that God came for the Marys and the Marthas, and even the Lazaruses that had the biggest need. And what we can do is we can copy and paste any circumstance, any situation into this story, can't we? Any life, whether it's, I have a friend that their son, they bought the new iPhone, the 10, that's waterproof. And he went fishing, and it fell in the lake the day after they bought it. And they didn't get it back. Now, that's a bad day. Really bad day for the kid. But for the parents, whether it's a dropped phone, a broken phone, a flat tire, or the hardest thing you've ever carried in your life, and I'm thankful that Jesus came for those things. And we can copy and paste any situation, any circumstance in that. And regardless of where you're at, that need's a big deal at that point. Mary and Martha have big needs in their lives at this time. You know, Lindsay and I have had some life happen to us, and you guys could stand up here and share your story exactly like I have the privilege of doing today. You know what I prayed about? Lord, this is a chance for me to share our story, to talk about how hope came in, what I can copy and paste in my life. And he said, this is what I want you to talk about. And I said, no, you don't. We're having this conversation of, I want to share that. I gave in and I'm sharing it today. So this is kind of a personal thing, and I get a little emotional about it, and that's okay, because it's the life that we've led. Can I be vulnerable today? All right, thank you. Probably our biggest issue in Lindsay and I's life was we had trouble having kids. And it was like a 6-year battle, $20,000 in doctor's bills and surgeries and procedures. And it's something that a lot of people are struggling with. And I want to share that story with you. When we were living in St. Louis, I was working for a church. I helped start a church and plant a church, and it is just going like gangbusters and growing like crazy. They're still there out in Wentzville, and there's like 4,500 people at this church. And I was like the right-hand guy in making this happen right there in Chesterfield. And Lindsay had a surgical procedure, and I got a phone call. She did, on her phone, and I answered it. Her 16-year-old nephew had died in a car wreck that day, and he was gone immediately. And tragic, horrible story. I literally made a pallet in the back of the car, gingerly put her in the back seat of the car, and we loaded up and went to Arkansas. Her family is down in Gentry. And man, that was tough. And I remember down there, I saw her dad at that funeral. And my dad has had heart stuff, and you know that gray ash color that people that have heart issues have? Her dad had that look, and I'm like, babe, you got to come to grips that your dad may not be here long. He drank for years and smoked and was not good on his body. And guys, 2 weeks later, he was gone. We head back for another funeral. And the Martha in me was exhausted. I was spent. There was times where I would see Lindsay on Monday, and I wouldn't see her again till Friday. I was running so hard for the kingdom. Funny story. But I was trained to be a Martha in that world, and I still carry a lot of those traits. But I was ready to give up. I was ready to quit. And I did quit some things in my life at that point. We left that church, that's an amazing church, to come here just to be, because I just needed to be. We quit our jobs. We came back. Lindsay got a job teaching 4th grade. She had always taught 1st grade, so that stretched her a bit. And I was the library aide at Hillcrest, the 6th grade building here in town. Breaking stereotypes is what I said. And so, man, it was just a hard time in my life. And I'd quit and I'd walked away and I was numb. But for us Marthas, everything has to look real proper. And we have to work really hard at making sure things look right. And religion tells us we have to work hard and everything has to be proper and nothing can be out of place. And for a Martha that's struggling, it was a hard season in my life. And I can't speak for Lindsay, but I was hurt. I was broken. I was needy. And I was living a lie, guys, because I wasn't living outside what I was living on the inside. And as time went on, everybody knew about our issues, you know, and I even had a friend that his ex-wife, of course, she's like, what's wrong with them? They can't even have kids. And it was just like, ugh, it was hard. And it got to the point where people would get pregnant and it would be like this awkward conversation because they didn't want to tell us. And it was like, oh, that dagger wound went so much deeper. And eventually they came to me and they said, Mike, you're part of the problem. And I'm like, thanks. So I had a simple procedure. What he said wasn't so simple. I'll spare the details. Guys, I'll just tell you, if you've ever gone through, you can't even compare. It was crazy. I won't share the details, but I can tell you this. I know more about all this girl stuff and fertility than any dude needs to know. But the cool part of the story is, I'll just let the cat out of the bag. We have 2 amazing kids. It's a happy ending, so some of the heaviness. In fact, what I love about God is what he takes you through, he helps other people go through too. And I've had a bunch of people in our lives that have had kids. Some of them have had twins, so we'll be careful when we're praying. Just give half the prayers. But man, that's what I love about the kingdom, is what you go through, the struggles and the triumphs that you have, you're supposed to share that with other people. But at this point, I wasn't in a place to share anything. But as the doctor said, I'll have the surgery, in 6 months your body will heal, and you guys will have a kid. And they did this little simple procedure to help us get pregnant, and lo and behold, Lindsay's pregnant. And it was the coolest thing for Martha, because man, I don't have to live 2 lives. It's the same life. I'm happy with God. I'm happy with my wife, my kids. Everything's good. And if you've had issues with that, you know that they're always checking your blood work. They're constantly, every week she had to go do blood work. And I remember getting that phone call and the nurse saying, this pregnancy is not viable. And I'm like, what does that even mean? And she says, your baby's going to die. I'm like, oh man. I had to go to school and get Lindsay and tell her that. And we went home, and it was hard, guys. I remember going through it. We just wanted some hope. Just like a sliver is the littlest, smallest hope. That's what we wanted to see. And Lindsay was in this full Mary mode, and she curled up at the feet of Jesus. I wasn't there. And I remember sitting. God always speaks to me in the bathroom. I don't know why. Because it's Martha, and I'm clean, you know. But I remember getting out of the shower. I remember looking in the mirror and pointing at myself, and I was like pointing at God. I'm like, this is all your fault because you weren't here. That's what Martha and Mary said. Had you been here, this wouldn't have happened. And I remember saying it took every ounce of faith to get pregnant. And now you're telling me I have to fight some more? It's not fair, and I can't do it anymore. I'm done. Ironically, Mary and Martha said the same thing. Had you been here, this wouldn't have happened. And you can put any situation in your life. You've probably said the exact same thing. And in our pain, in our hurt, and I copied and pasted my fury and my anger on Jesus. The one that came to give us life, and we're putting that on him. We have to be careful what we copy and paste on him. Because that is what our faith is, our expectation, and our hope is in him. He's the one that came to give us life and give us life more abundantly. Have you noticed when good things happen? Look what I've done. I worked so hard, and God's so good and faithful. Look at the 93 kids that have gotten saved. But when bad things happen, Jesus, where were you? If you'd been here, this wouldn't have happened. This is on you. And that's the heart that I took in that situation. You know, Jesus probably feels the same thing when he gets mislabeled as we do, when he gets mischaracterized as we do. John 10:10 says, the thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. I come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. And you know what? I always tell this in my 20 years as a youth pastor, I always tell them this, how to identify where stuff is coming from. If it's killing, stealing, and destroying, it's from the enemy. If it's life and abundance, it's from Jesus. And we have to have a healthy view of Jesus if he's going to show up and get us out of our stuff, out of our life. We have to have a healthy view and perspective of Jesus. But in the midst of our copied and pasted stories, we don't see the end. We can't. We're so into our stuff, we can't see where we're at. We can't even feel things. For us, if you've ever gone through this, every month you find out bad news. And that's how it was for us. And it becomes this wave on the ocean in this constant pounding. It's bad news, and it's bad news, and it's bad news. And we get in this rhythm that about that time you get the bad news, and it just continues to pile on. And the life that you're living, you get into this rhythm and this rut that, like the funeral that I talked about, we're creatures of habit, we're creatures of rhythm, we're creatures of rut. And eventually, your expectations are so shot. And when Jesus shows up, you can't even see that he's showing up. And it becomes so heavy, and I felt so alone. Have you noticed in life that we can really only focus on one thing? There's only one throne in our life that Jesus needs to be on, but there's only room for one thing on there. And whatever you're focused on and whatever you're driving towards, that's the thing that's going to be on that throne. One thing is all we can do. And our eyes and our hearts can only be singularly focused. That's why Jesus has to be part of everything. And sometimes that's all we see. What we focus on is all we see. I want you to watch this.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go! So, raise your hand if you did not see the bear the first time. Raise your hand if you did see the bear the first time. Raise your hand if you've seen the video before and you knew it was coming. Listen, we're singularly focused, cheaters and liars. We're going to have an altar call at the end. You can meet Jesus. Copying and pasting your internet and watching while you're at work. Anyway, we can only focus on one thing. That's it. One thing. And that's why Jesus wants to be part of everything, because that's what we need to copy and paste. He is hope. And it's so easy to miss the dancing bear in our life. It's so easy to miss Jesus doing the little things, providing for us, providing for our kids, miraculous provision. We so often miss to see the little things when he's working in our lives, because we're just so focused on the big thing that we're struggling with. We have to have the ability to see things. I love what it says in Psalms 34. It says, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name forever." What does magnify means? It means make bigger. So you're telling me if I focus on God, I can magnify him in my life. Is that what that verse is telling us? Magnify him, right? Make him bigger. Don't you think if we're focusing on other things, we can make those bigger too? I've seen it in my life. When my circumstance becomes bigger than Jesus, because it's just, that's all I see. I call this problem magnification trap. And I can barely recognize Jesus when he shows up. I don't see him when he shows up. We need to make sure we have a healthy perspective of Jesus as we walk through this life. We've talked about Mary and we've talked about Martha, but let's talk about Jesus. In this story, he calls himself the Son of God. Did you notice that? It's one of the first times he does that. Like 81 times, he refers to himself as the Son of Man in the Gospels. But this one instance, he says, this will bring glory to the Son of God. See, when he talks about being the Son of Man, he's talking about his connection with us, the human side, right? I'm the Son of Man. I'm here for you. But in this story, he's talking about Son of God. He's got the manly thing, but he's talking about his connection to God. And in this story, Jesus, I can see God working in Jesus. I can see God moving in his heart. And I can see this story setting up what happens. In fact, if you study this out, the experts, the scholars say this is setting the tone for what happens 12 or 13 chapters later. Don't you see some similarities in the cross? Some similarities. What kind of grave was it? It was a cave, and there was a stone rolled in front of it. Isn't it interesting that the theologians say that, and the pagans, when Jesus died, there was somebody watching the grave, right? That's what they did. They thought that the spirit, when a man dies or a woman dies, they thought the spirit hovers around there for up to 3 days because it doesn't know what to do. It's kind of confused. And that's what the theologians and the pagans believed. And they said this: after 3 days, there's no way anything can be raised from the dead. But for 3 days, it's possible. Jesus waited 4. See, he did that to show that he's got authority over death and the grave. And what he did that day was setting the stage for what he did 12 chapters later, to revive himself in that grave. That's a pretty powerful story, and I wish I could talk about that a little bit more. But what did Martha say when Jesus talked to her? He says, go get Mary. And what did she say? the teacher is here. And it's a great story that Jesus died for us and saved our souls and our hearts, and now we get to go to heaven with him. But Jesus taught in parables, right? He taught in real life circumstances how that applies to each and every one of our lives. And don't you think if this story is in the Bible that there's a reason and a purpose for Jesus doing it and for God doing it? And it's not just a story that's cool, but it's an illustration and it's a parable and it's an opportunity for Jesus to breathe life back into things in us that are dead. And it may be a marriage, and it may be you're broke and broke as a joke and you got no money, and he wants to breathe life into that. It may mean you want to have kids and you can't. It may mean a whole bunch of different things. Passions, dreams have died in you. And Jesus wants to breathe life back into those today. And I believe this story is an illustration of that. And this is not just a regular day at church. Mary and Martha didn't have a clue what was getting ready to happen. And after Martha talked to Jesus and told Mary the teacher was here, something amazing happened at the end of the story. But before that, I love what Jesus did. What did he do? He wept. He cried. He could have snapped his fingers and fixed it all, but he didn't do that. He said, time out. I want to be with you for a minute. So you know I understand the human tragedy, the human drama that we copy and paste. I know what you're going through. When you hurt, I hurt. When you struggle, I struggle. But guys, in the middle of my stuff, I couldn't see that in Jesus. I didn't know he was sitting next to me crying when I'm crying. I didn't know he's sitting next to me hurting when I'm hurting. Listen, Jesus is the hope of the world. And he came to revive things in us. And there's things in some of you guys in this place, just like there's some things in me that I've put to rest. And he's here to revive. And he wants to do something pretty special in your heart and in your mind. But before he does that, he just wants to be with us for a moment. And I think that's what church is about. Man, we worship just to be with him, to hang out with him. This is what Jesus was to the sisters. He called this messianic time out to come and just be with them because he understands our struggles, our loneliness, how we feel. He gets it. And Mary and Martha experienced separation and loss, and so have we. And we have to be careful that we're copying and pasting Jesus into our lives and hope into our lives. 2 Corinthians 12:9, it says, grace is all you need. My power works best in your weakness. That's awesome. Psalms 55, it says, give your burdens to the Lord, and he will take care of you. He will not permit the godly to fall. When I got that phone call from the nurse that had zero tact, when she told me that, it's not viable. I'm like, you're not viable. Anyway, sorry. I went from the mountaintop to the bottom. And you know what? I hit every bump and every bruise all the way down. I hit every tree possible, every rock. And that journey from the top to the bottom in seconds almost destroyed us. And for me, getting out of that was copying and pasting Jesus in. And copying and pasting hope in. Because we so focus on being at the bottom of the mountain and we forget about the God that wants to put us back on top of it. And it's critical that we copy and paste Jesus in. And as we quickly wrap this up today, I want to share something with you that I didn't even share in the first service. Something that God whispered in my ear that somebody in here needs to hear. When I was going through all that, and this is what he said. Mike, this is not your fault, but it is your fight. You got to choose to fight this thing. And you can fight it or not, but I'm here with you to fight. Maybe you're going through something today. Maybe you're struggling. Maybe there's something in you. Maybe this brought up some memories of things that I didn't know that was an issue. Here's what I want to do. I want to challenge you tonight, today, this morning, whatever it is. Who are you today? Are you Martha, that everything's got to be proper and in its place, and you're exhausted because you're trying to put everything away and it's just not working? Are you Mary, that you just want to fall at his feet and be like, I need you right now. I need you. Or are you Lazarus, that you have the biggest need that has ever been, and Jesus, I need you right now? Who are you today? Proverbs 13:12, it says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, Guys, in an instant, hope can show up. And it can say, where's it buried at? And it can roll up those sleeves and be like, where's it buried at? We're getting ready to do something here in this place. But what have you buried in your life? What have you put away in the corner that you don't want anybody to see? That you're scared to expose it to Jesus because it's really stinky and it's really dirty and it's the corners of your house and nobody's ever been there before. What is it? I think he wants to revive those things in this place tonight. Will you please stand with me? If that's you tonight, today, I don't know why I keep saying tonight, I don't care. I can only focus on one thing. Listen, you don't need to bow your heads and close your eyes. If you're going through something, whether it's you dropped your phone and it broke, you got a flat tire on the way to church, or you're dealing with the heaviest thing you've ever had to deal with, if you're going through that and you need Jesus to show up and breathe some life into that and revive that and bring hope, if that's you, just raise your hand. Awesome. It's okay. It doesn't have to be the heaviest thing, or it can be super heavy. The same Jesus wants to answer those. If you're here with your spouse, grab their hand. I want to pray for you. Father, I come to you right now, Lord, in Jesus' name. God, I thank you for this chance to hang out with these amazing people, this amazing church, and to share some hope, to share my story. But Jesus, I pray you'd show up today for these people in their hearts and in their minds, that you'd bring the hope that only you can bring, that we would copy and paste you into this situation and you into this circumstance. And Lord, that it would just be about you. And Lord, let us not see the heaviness of the circumstance and the pain of the waves crashing every month, but let us see you and you alone. God, show up in this place for these people. God, do something amazing. Breathe life into what they thought was dead, into the vision, into the purpose, into the marriage. And Lord, those couple in here that are struggling with having kids, God, breathe hope into that. Lord, breathe endurance into that. Lord, broaden their shoulders so they can carry the weight of the thing that's on them. Lord, that you would be there with them. For those that have experienced loss, Lord, that you'd comfort and you'd fix hearts. Because once the hearts are fixed, Lord, you can do anything. With every head bowed and every eye closed in this place, you know what, guys? There's nothing better, no one looking around, than copying and pasting Jesus into your situation, but into your heart. So I want to challenge some of you guys today. Everybody in this room, I'm going to challenge you to pray this simple prayer with me. Everybody repeat after me. Heavenly Father, I need Jesus. I need him to come in. I'm sorry I've sinned. I know you died for those sins. Forgive me. Make entrance into my heart. Thank you for laying down your life for me. Come in and be Lord and Savior. In Jesus' name. No one looking around. If you prayed that prayer today for the first time, or you're coming back to Jesus saying, man, I need to get back. I need to center myself to get everything back to that situation. If either one of those two, no one looking around, if you could just raise your hand so I can see and we can be agreeing with you. Keep them up for a minute. Awesome. I count like 12 of them. That's awesome. Listen, guys, you can look up. Jesus takes this thing pretty serious. He takes this life pretty serious. And what he did for us, we don't deserve. But I want to encourage you. Get your feet planted here. Show up next Sunday downtown for Growth Track 1. Get your feet planted here. Find people that can run with you and love you through your faults and be okay with them. And lock your arms with people that are where you're at and run hard together. Do something amazing this year in 2019 that you've never done before. And that's give Jesus those little corners that you always like to hide to protect because you're Martha and it's dirty. And be okay with that. Have an amazing 2019. And let me pray for you real quick one last time. God, thank you for this opportunity. Lord, do something in this place. Thank you for the leaders. Lord, I just pray for just supernatural stuff to happen. Lord, for Jesus to show up every week and revive dead things in people's hearts and in the graves that they've buried things in. Be with us. God, I pray for protection here over the next few days. Lord, for those that are traveling and still doing some Christmas. But God, I pray that most of all, we'd put you on that throne of our life. We'd copy and paste Jesus and hope in. to every opportunity we have, every situation we have. God be Lord of our life. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.